Since the last video I made was about some phobia I have relating to video games, I figured that it would be great to explore a much more rational one for the start of this video.
I would define it in one easy term, but from what I can find, there is no word for the fear of being chased.
The closest I can find is lupus lipophobia, which is the fear of being chased by timberwolves around a kitchen table on a newly waxed floor while wearing socks. While everyone agrees that phobia is epic and random, I will have to take inspiration instead from the Dr. Ionix MD on Urban Dictionary, who calls it deocophobia.
Fun little game if you guys want to play along at home. Go ahead and take a shot every single time I pronounce a word wrong in this video, and let me know if you die or not.
See, being a fan of horror games makes deocophobia an absolute nightmare. Horror games often balance on a very thin line between thrilling, heart-racing action and the primary cause of my ascension to the great beyond. Even with this strong fear, I still absolutely love survival horror video games, which almost always put you in a powerless position where you're the one being chased. As a young whippersnapper, I always held on to this appreciation, and that's probably why I still remember Haunting Ground to this day. Haunting Ground is a survival horror game released for the PS2 in 2005 by Capcom. This game is closely associated with games like Clock Tower 3 and the Silent Hill franchise for its similarities in gameplay.
Wait, where the hell did I just go?
But I've always felt like this one stood out against its contemporaries. In Haunting Ground, you play as Fiona Belli, a woman who's been kidnapped and trapped in a crazy, wacky castle filled with people who just want to kill you super hard. The main gameplay loop revolves around exploring the castle to find key items while also solving puzzles and escaping pursuers. While you have limited combat abilities to defend yourself from the threats which lurk in the castle, you have a companion, Huey, to protect you through the experience. The game feels like a perfection of the survival horror genre in many ways, since it provides so much depth to the experience. Haunting Ground creates an engaging and dynamic experience which strips stability from the player and offers challenges and rewards for exploration and curiosity. In this video, I want to explore how Haunting Ground stands out as a classic survival horror experience with a level of depth and intricacy that is unparalleled. Also, I'm a little sick, so my voice might sound weird in this video, so please don't yell at me. The game starts with a creepy PS2 era CG dungeon where a half-naked Fiona wakes up in a small metal crate. It's a fantastic start. She fumbles her way out of the meat layer and the gameplay starts. Almost immediately, we run into one of the most prominent themes that people notice and constantly talk about. The sexualization of Fiona, the main character, is rampant throughout Haunting Ground as it ties in closely to the plot. Fiona is always vulnerable, which is reinforced through instances of constant pursuit from stalkers, scantily clad outfits, and even disturbing themes of voyeurism throughout the game. The game focuses on stripping power away from the player and Fiona, which creates this unsettling experience that haunts you through the castle. As Fiona enters the castle, she encounters Daniela, the sole castle maid, who stares off into the distance talking to herself, which triggers Fiona to have a flashback to Mr. X tipping his fedora through a car window. As you get changed into your primary outfit, you are treated to a lovely scene where Fiona is watched through a spooky Monet painting, which sets off this game's fascination with voyeurism. After zooming around a couple hallways, you stumble across the first antagonist of the game, Debilitus. Debilitus is a mentally disabled groundskeeper for the castle who I swear to God is not just a cheap character. I promise there's more to him than just like mental disability equals bad. Just bear with me. I know it looks rough. After a quick cost-benefit analysis, Debilitus decides that he would rather play with Fiona instead of his doll, which initiates the first chase sequence of the game. This is where the core gameplay loop starts to take form. Throughout the game, you are pursued by stalkers who will search around the map to find you. Your goal is to avoid them by hiding or running away, while also trying to complete puzzles and progress through the game. It isn't easy, since the enemies will catch on to tactics if you continue to use them over and over again. Hiding behind a door to escape a stalker might work the first time, but if you use it too much, the enemies will start to catch on. It gives a dynamic feeling to the chase sequences, which I really appreciate as it requires you to plan around your escape, since it's super organic. Every now and then you'll be just chilling in a room and then all the background music will start to silence. If that happens, you have about 10 seconds before Debilitus blows open the door to fuck you up. You can pick up on clues on oncoming threats like this with Huey too, since he'll start growling at a door if a killer's on the way. I always find it so terrifying when you're minding your business exploring the room when you hear some creepy shit in the hallway and stomps rapidly approaching. It builds this suspense of always being watched and tailed, no matter how many times you shake the killer. Fast forwarding a bit through the plot, there's something about like a pregnant doll and a disembodied voice yells at Fiona, and then you feed a meth plate to a golem, and then Fiona gets weirdly confused about some furniture, you know. Debilitus decides to play peekaboo with Fiona, which kicks off one of the oddest cutscenes in this game. To begin, Fiona performs the worst escape attempt known to man, and then is shocked when Debilitus follows her 3 feet out the door she just ran from. Then, Debilitus, who somehow forgot he was chasing Fiona, gets super excited again when he finds her, and then chases her up a staircase. And then Fiona gives up on her escape again when she sees that same fucking chair that she is so goddamn bothered by, which then allows Debilitus to catch up to her since, you know, she only moved 3 feet forward. And then the same disembodied voice from earlier yells some Latin bullshit at Debilitus. Debilitus almost says fuck it, but then decides to back down and looks really sad, which makes me feel bad. And then the voice reveals himself to be Ricardo, keeper of the castle, and then we get some fucking terrifying CG cutscenes interjected, and Fiona's parents being super dead makes her really dizzy and she passes out. I realize now that I really didn't explain the plot very much, so just as a quick rundown, Fiona Belli is in a car crash, and then she gets kidnapped and put in a cage in this castle, and everybody in the castle is fucking insane, and she's like, I don't want to be in the castle anymore, so she tries to leave, and then there's a dog, and they want her Azoth, and it's just magic, so, like, you know... After that ordeal, she wakes up in a bed and then hears some whimpering outside and finds Huey, the terrifying CG beast from the opening cutscene, chained to a tree. Fiona frees Huey and heads back inside to find Debilitus just chillin', and then he just does whatever this is, for whatever reason, and then Huey appears to save the day. This is the introduction to combat, which consists of commanding Huey to battle for you. You can command Huey to attack stalkers, search for items, and even help with puzzles, which is essential to completing the game. You also have to manage Huey's stamina and health while making sure that your bond with him is in tip-top shape. If you take care of Huey and praise him for being the best boy, he will listen to your commands. If you mistreat Huey, he will ignore you, go rogue, and you can get one of the worst endings in the game. Since he sticks with you through the whole game, I like that you have to take care of your relationship. It makes cooperation with Huey feel super rewarding, and it's a driving force to escape in the game. Now, I mentioned that you have to manage Huey's health throughout the game, which is partially true in normal mode. He can be injured during fights, which will make him cower from enemies and slow down, but he cannot die. I'm playing on hard mode, however, which makes it so he can die if he takes too much damage, which immediately causes a game over. It makes it a bit more tense during fights since I don't want Huey to take aggro from enemies. Hard mode also makes the stalkers more aggressive while searching and fighting, which I feel like is a better way to play the game. So now that Huey has joined the party, the game settles into what it'll look like for pretty much the whole experience. You zoom around and solve puzzles with Huey while ducking from stalkers every now and then. This is pretty par for the course for these Clock Tower-esque games, but I genuinely feel that Haunted Ground is so creative with its approach that I could go on for hours about the things that I love that this game does. One of the first great things comes for the synergy you need to develop with Huey. While on the surface Huey looks like a man in a dog costume, he is actually invaluable to your playthrough. I already mentioned how Huey can help you by alerting you to incoming stalkers, but this premonition can even extend to Huey detecting traps. One of the earliest examples is his marionette room that you reach in the beginning of the game. Now, when you first enter it, I'll admit, it doesn't look super inviting, but it is super easy to accidentally trigger a death here by stepping in front of the creepy eyeballs on the wall. If you pay attention to Huey, since he will growl at traps like this, you can successfully avoid it without being pincushioned to the wall in a dramatic fashion. Speaking of this game over cutscene, I absolutely love how this game handles them. There's so many cool cutscenes you can find in the game which reward players for exploring and trying stupid stuff. Shit like this is all over Haunting Grounds, and even when I replayed the game a couple times for this video, I discovered some super cool ones that I hadn't seen before. One of them is in the hallway you first encounter Debilitus, and when you approach a door... Don't worry though, it is not what you think. It is just Ricardo slapping the shit out of Daniela. Moments like these can actually affect your gameplay, since Daniela mad dogging me made Fiona enter a panic state, which is a mechanic where you get so scared you zoom around at high speed with grunge music video special effects. These extra cutscenes are so cool because they don't always put themselves out there for you to find. I randomly stumbled on this cutscene, and there's so many more I haven't unlocked in the game. It also organically affects gameplay, which is something super cool that I always love to see. Fast forwarding through the plot a little bit more, we find ourselves in a heated duel with everyone's favorite goof, after he pulls some high-level mind games to lock us into a room. Now, I didn't realize it until I was writing the script for this video, but the door in this room opens differently than in the cutscene, so I can't help but imagine that Debilitus just broke the door hinges just to pull this stunt. This is the first boss fight of the game, which handles the idea of you being outmatched pretty well. Your goal is to manipulate Debilitus into breaking these lever things, which ultimately knocks a chandelier down on his head. It's simple, but I like it a lot. I think that games like Clock Tower and Silent Hill suffer with boss fights since combat is never really the main focus of these games. If you do feel like brute forcing the fight, however, you could just kick the ever-living fuck out of Debilitus until he dies, which can change the ending of the game. For my intents and purposes, I drop the chandelier on Debilitus, which ends the boss fight in a climatic cutscene. But since Debilitus is built like a goddamn Home Depot, the chandelier doesn't actually kill him, and instead just makes him find God. Fiona and Huey both have this hilariously puzzled look as Debilitus bows to them, and he just walks that chandelier off like a champion. From this point on, Debilitus is no longer trying to command grab us, so we can continue our great escape from the castle. After about 5 minutes of freedom, Daniela reminds us that dinner is served. Oh, thanks, Daniela.
Dinner is served, miss.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. I get it, thank you. Daniela has a super one-sided heart-to-heart with Fiona before she just fucking leaves, and then Daniela licks the soup. Kind of a dick move, Fiona. I mean, Daniela goes through all the trouble to make you dinner and you dramatically hobble away like you're gonna die. Daniela even makes sure that Fiona is feeling okay by checking her pulse and then checking her tummy for tummy aches. Can you blame Daniela for kind of having an emotional moment after just being completely disrespected? Now, long story short, we now have our next big threat for the game. Daniela the Incomplete. Daniela is a different beast from Debilitus entirely. Daniela seems to be a bit smarter when it comes to chasing Fiona, since she can pull some sneaky stunts on you. She'll sometimes stand on the opposite side of doors just to wait and catch you off guard, as well as hide in hiding places for a surprise attack on you. If you trigger a certain cutscene in the Jupiter room later in the game, you can actually make Daniela switch her massive glass shard for a fire poker, which makes her not only stronger, but more aggressive. Her section also has these mirrors that you can use in a chase to make her panic and stop chasing you. Sometimes when you explore as well, you can just find her cleaning stuff instead of chasing you. Her dedication to Castle Belly is unparalleled. Daniela's portion of the game is really dynamic, and it complements the straightforwardness of Debilitus inclusion really well. After learning the gist of how the Stalker system works, the game pivots a bit to challenge some of your previous concepts about what you can and can't do. It's a really fun way of challenging expectations, and it requires you to be more conscientious about your decisions, lest you get murdered to death. After running around the castle some more and feeding the distant cousin of the toilet hand from Majora's Mask of Mandragora, we enter this crypt and do another golem puzzle. This eventually leads us through some MC Escher staircases to our big boss fight with Daniela. She dramatically enters this room and loses her goddamn shit before Huey just starts murdering her. We get this awesome, if not misguided, monologue from Daniela, which kicks off the boss fight.
Blood, flesh, woman, you vile creature. You lure the man into your filthy body again and again, and you are allowed to do that because you are a precious, precious little prince.
This is a lot like the fight with Debilitus, since you need to have a firm grasp on the commands for Huey to solve the puzzle. Eventually, after much turmoil, Daniela stands on this shining circle and I guess screams so loud that it exploded the glass ceiling, leading a giant glass shard to impale her, which kills her instantly. If you examine her body after the fight, you get some flavor text talking about how when she was alive, her facial expressions always seemed ice cold and devoid of feeling. But now, it's almost like she is happily smiling from ear to ear. So ends our duel with Daniela, but we'll go more in depth on her character later in the video. The key we get after the Daniela fight lets us explore a bit more, till we find a big green tube where Ricardo, the disembodied voice from earlier, confronts Fiona. We now have the third stalker of the game, and you get how this works. It seems that Ricardo is going for a more direct approach than Debilitus or Daniela, since his weapon of choice is gun. After some puzzles and more nonsense, we find ourselves in Chaos Forest, and Huey immediately nopes the fuck out of the woods. After wandering around for a bit, you're confronted by Ricardo, who finally explains why he's chasing you. Ricardo tells Fiona that she inherited her father's Azoth, and that he wants to be born again. It turns out Ricardo and Ugo, that's Fiona's father, are clones. A cutscene flashback lets us know that Ricardo was the one who caused Fiona's car crash, and he impaled him with some fancy dagger to steal his Azoth. Unfortunately, Fiona's birth led her to inheriting the Azoth, hence why everyone, except for Debilitus, wants to fucking murder her. There's a pretty interesting part here where you can actually find Huey, who was wounded by Ricardo, before you ever enter this cutscene. If you don't choose to find Huey and your relationship with him is awful, you can get the worst ending in the game, where you are captured by Ricardo and are impregnated.
I do not intend to kill you. If you would just lend me your womb.
Seriously, it's kind of fucked up.
Pause.
Editor Houston here, about 7 months later from when I recorded this. I was doing some research on a forum and I found this post. To the person who made this post, what the fuck is wrong with you? Luckily, since, you know, I'm not a total asshole, Huey comes to save me, and Lorenzo, the only goddamn normal person in this castle, gives us a note explaining how to escape. And after another 3 steps out the door, Ricardo appears once again, kind of. He uses an invisibility potion to make our lives super fucking miserable, which now means that we have an invisible pursuer. Fucking great. 1 tower ascension later, and we face off with Ricardo, who hits Fiona with the best pickup line known to man.
Let me into your womb!
All that this fight requires is a pile driver from the top ropes by Huey, which sends Ricardo reeling off the edge of the water tower. And with that, another employee of Belly Castle meets their end. The end is near for Fiona as she finds herself in the House of Truth, where lo and behold, we meet up with Lorenzo. Oh, and Jesus, fuck, he's old and nasty. Lorenzo drops some truth bombs that he created Ugo and Ricardo in between overly audible slurps. Lorenzo then talks shit about Fiona's dead mom straight to Fiona's face, and then surprise! Lorenzo wants Fiona also. Yay. In between this cutscene and where the gameplay starts again, he somehow loses his wheelchair and is just fucking hauling ass. This isn't your average Black Ops crawler who got mad as shit. Lorenzo is a fucking race car. But then he blows up. Just fucking kidding, he's back, bitches! After that, I optionally chose to farm the fuck out of him for some free items before luring him into a rock grinder where he gets crushed to death. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, there was little to no attempt from Lorenzo here to crawl away, which is ridiculous since this dude can hit Mach 8 easy. Regardless, we forge on until we get to a room where we are immediately locked in the room by Lorenzo, who just shit-talks Fiona for fun. This is a pretty great interaction because Lorenzo will actually do things like taunt you for hiding in a closet and even tease you if you get mad as shit and start kicking everything. Lorenzo eventually lets us out of captivity and confronts Fiona again, who just can't help but call Lorenzo daddy because, oh no, he's hot. Lorenzo attempts once more to extract Fiona's Azoth and rebirth himself before he realizes that sometimes ladies just don't care about the looks. This makes him pretty upset, so he just beats the shit out of us with magic haymakers. He can also just fucking teleport behind you, which is pretty swell, so his chase sequence is hard as fuck compared to every other stalker. Eventually comes the final boss fight, Fiona versus handsome Lorenzo. This fight is insanely hard compared to the others, since Lorenzo is way more powerful. After some swift kicks to Lorenzo and just some rocks that are lying around, he falls into the conveniently placed lava pit and finally dies. Actually, just fucking kidding again. Lorenzo is now on fire and everything is exploding. I struggled super hard with this final sequence on my first playthrough. You have to manage crouching every time a tremor hits, otherwise you fall down, which allows Lorenzo to catch up to you. If he manages to grab you, you die instantly. Now, I figure if I was grabbed by a flaming skeleton too, I'd just probably die. After one final murder attempt from a statue, Lorenzo goofily tries to stop Fiona before finally dying. Fiona also makes sure to confirm that kill before escaping the castle with Huey. But just before we get out, guess who shows up? That's right, Debilitus is back, bitches! But he has nothing but respect for Fiona, so he lets her leave after bowing to her. Finally, after much tribulation, Fiona is free, and we are now treated to one last cutscene where Debilitus just returns to business as usual. With that, Haunting Grounds is over. However, there are a couple more cool things I just want to go through with this game. I got ending A, Fortis Fortuna Juvat, where Fiona throws up the deuces to Debilitus before making her great escape with Huey. As I mentioned earlier in the video, killing Debilitus in his boss fight makes you get ending B, Ignis Aurum Probat, which is the same as A, except Debilitus won't show up. on account of death. Ending C, Dona Nobis Possum, is a little more unique, since you have to beat the game once to get it. After the Debilitus fight, you can actually visit his hut, where he gives you the smudged key, which opens the locked stall door in the bathroom. From there, you can get a key which opens the front gate, letting you skip essentially all of the game. In this final cutscene, Fiona and Huey leave through the gate, while Lorenzo rolls off the staircase to unsuccessfully chase her. There's tons of fun stuff like Ending C, as well as extra cutscenes that you won't see on your first playthrough. There's also a secret room where you can see cutscenes, character models, play mini games, and even try on costumes that you earn in-game. There's tons of incentive to return to the game and play through it multiple times, since the level of detail in the game is incredibly high. One fun thing of the comments you can actually read in the menu from things that you see in-game. Fiona will comment on various stuff she sees, which is a cool way to get her thoughts on things in-game. When you play on hard mode, Huey comments on stuff instead of Fiona, which is pretty cute and sometimes cheeky. Beyond all the fun little Easter eggs and cool stuff you can find in the game, I really want to pay attention to how amazing the cast of characters are. I never really valued them on my first playthrough, but after learning about them more, it's super cool to see how Capcom made their characters so in-depth. Debilitus has a childlike mind since he was an underdeveloped homunculus created by Ricardo. Because of this, he doesn't really care about Fiona's Azoth and likely doesn't even know what to do with it, which is why his interactions with her come off more as playing than actually trying to hurt her. After his boss fight, he really doesn't care about chasing her anymore, since I think he realizes she isn't a toy. Debilitus is a great character in the story, and I've always loved him because he really doesn't mean Fiona harm, and goes out of his way to help her in the game. Daniela, on the other hand, is a massively complex character who comes off as incredibly tragic by the end of her life. Daniela is kind of confusing since it doesn't appear that she was created by Lorenzo or Ricardo. According to the Clock Tower Wikia, Daniela was most likely kidnapped and experimented on by Lorenzo and Ricardo. For whatever reason, she can't feel pain or emotion or bear children, which drives her to desire Fiona's Azoth. Her jealousy for Fiona drives her insane because she believes that the Azoth can make her complete. In her final moments, she seems happy, probably because she experienced the pain of a massive glass shard impaling her, or even because she's free from her admittedly awful life. Ricardo's desire for Azoth stems from the jealousy that he has towards his brother Ugo, since he wasted his Azoth apparently. Ricardo ultimately decides that he can use Fiona to rebirth himself and find immortality, so he can continue the teachings of Aurelius Belli to find the great truth. Lorenzo similarly seeks for the Azoth for immortality, which explains why he helps Fiona throughout the story, and also creepily watches her change. These desires are also reflected in the game over screens, where you can hear the unique audio every time a stalker kills you, like for Debilitus, where it just sounds he's ripping apart Fiona like a toy, or even in Daniela's, where she maniacally laughs as she assumedly cuts out Fiona's wounds. I could probably go on for a long time about everything this game has to offer, since there's tons of cool stuff to find. It's a shame that more people haven't experienced how cool this game is, so hopefully this video has at least given you a reason to check it out. Haunting Ground is one of the best horror games in the PS2, and it has an amazing amount of care pumped into it. It's dark and disgusting, but also hilarious at times, while always rewarding players for sticking through it all. I love this game, and I just wanted to make a video to talk about how much I love it and just kind of point out how much fucking care is put into it. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, and welcome to the end of the video. Thank you for watching, first and foremost. This was a really long process making this video. I definitely didn't make it easier on myself. I started this about 7 months ago and wrote an outline, recorded it in like November, and picked up the project and put it back down while editing and putting it together, just again and again with everything going on with graduating college and stuff like that. So it's been a long time coming, and I'm happy that it's done. I'm happy that I can just move on from it and create something else. I love this game, and I'm happy that I got the chance to talk about it, if I hadn't explicitly stated that throughout the video. Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody who's kind of supported this game and games like it, like weird obscure PS2 games or weird obscure like horror games, because that was just something I loved growing up, and people who still keep that going and people who still like pump energy into showing these games off and keeping them alive. People like Ecdysis and Sphere Hunter, who I believe she made a great video on it. I haven't watched it because I didn't want my video to be too influenced by her video, which I'm sure is fucking awesome. Yeah, and even people who put together like the Wikia page for games like this, because that's initially how I found this game. It was just people talking about it online as weird, obscure PS2 games, almost always made by Capcom. Like I'm just happy that so many people talk about this game and still do talk about it and show it off today, because I think it keeps alive this really select part of gaming history, which was weird PS2 games. And you know, I'm very happy and thankful for that. And I'm happy to, at least in some small way, contribute to that collection of information with this video. That's basically it. I'm happy that the project's done. I am excited to not edit this video anymore, and I don't know what the next thing's gonna be. It might be a Catherine video, because I can't stop putting Catherine music in my videos, but yeah, we'll see. Thanks for watching, thanks for sticking around this long, and yeah, stay safe, and I love you all.